That's part 4 of video of episode 1. I had to end the other one kind of suddenly because I got a call from my doctor. Okay.
Knock on the door. Having a sister younger than my son is very, very different. Although I'm her sister, I'm an adult first. My child is an infant, of course.
Okay. So question 22. How does she feel she has to do as the parent in terms of his schooling? She said that because he's not in those honors classes already, or like ever. I don't know if he's like working towards them or not, but she feels like she has to like be the cheerleader and like be the one encouraging him, pushing him to do well in his homework and stuff because the teachers and the faculty at school aren't doing that. How would I have dealt with Terrence? As a parent, I would be doing the same thing, like being a cheerleader and everything. As a teacher, I would, even though he's not in honors classes, like if I was teaching not honors classes, then like I would still I would still push my students as if they were going to Yale someday. Like, if that's what that question means. Okay, what do you think about the policy in PE related to wearing uniform? What happened to Terrence? Okay, so it looks like the PE uniform policy thing is that if you don't have the uniform, you don't get to participate, which is he's struggling with because he seemed like he really wanted to be playing the sport with everybody else. Um, I think it's a fair policy to an extent, but at the same time, I don't because like, what if a student can't afford to buy the uniform? And it sounds like he might have lost his uniform, and then like has to get another one, which is that's his fault. But and like so like he has to buy it or whatever. So I think that I wouldn't really feel too bad about that. But like if they have to buy the uniform the first time, then I think that's really ridiculous because like if it's a requirement then the school needs to be providing that because not everybody can buy it. So if it is his first uniform, then I think that's ridiculous. And he already lost a uniform and it's just buying another one because he lost it and wasn't being responsible about it, then I don't really feel too bad about that. Um, happened with Terrence, he just had to sit out and yeah, he couldn't participate because he didn't have his uniform. So Grant describes himself in terms of race as biracial. Explain how his conversation related to acting. Okay, so he says that people mistake him for thinking that he doesn't want to be black and he wants to be white because like, and I think this has to do with thing in chapter one of like acting white because like people know that like as bad as this is, as sad as this is, how messed up this is, white people tend to be like favored over other minority groups. And so like by acting white, maybe they think that they can be favored too, like or they can fit into that white group and like get like all the benefits of being a white person in our society, which are not right and not and is messed up. And it's really sad that people have to pretend like they're something that they're not just so that they get treated better. Um, how would I address students like Grant? I would just make sure that he was known for his who he really wanted to be. Just like every other student. I would do that for the white students, I'd do that for the black students, I would do that for any student. Like that I think each student like whatever they identify as, I think that they need to be recognized as that. And like I would try to help make it a point to make sure that the other students in the classroom knew that. And if I heard anything otherwise, then I would make sure to address it. cheerleading coach is a brat. I don't think football coach should act like that either. Tiara says that she loves number 27. Tiara says that she loves. Oh wait, wrong one. My thoughts related to the different ideas mentioned about cheerleading, but the cheerleading coach by her students. I think that honestly, she sounds like a brat. She sounds horrible, and like maybe some people do well with being yelled at all the time. Like Tiara seems to be like that, I guess, because she says that she likes her. But I think that most people don't function well like that at all. Like the majority of the population, and I think that this is really messed up how she's like coaching. She says something about like a football team being coached like that too, but like football teams shouldn't be coached like that either. So, she says something about how she's not working. She's working with very, she's not working with very shy people, but like some of them seem kind of shy because they were talking to the camera about things that they didn't seem like they would say to her. And I think that she is making a judgment on them based off of what the stereotype of them of black females, high school females are, and maybe a lot of black high school females are more opinionated, but maybe they're not, and she doesn't seem to be looking at that side. My thoughts about the yeah, I already said that. Okay, number 26. How does the cheerleading coach connect cheerleading to becoming an employable person? Shoot. So I think that she thinks that like by being able to listen to authority well, like you're more employable, you're more like you can do well in a work environment. And so I guess she thinks that it would benefit a student because like they will listen to their teachers more, they will listen to future employers someday, whatever it may be. Number 27, what does Tiara say about her cheerleading coach? She loves her cheerleading coach. That does surprise me because her sister seems to be very the same way as the cheerleading coach, like very on it with her. And she likes the cheerleading coach, but not her sister. Um, how she views oh yeah, she views her sister like the opposite of how she views her cheerleading coach, but they act like they discipline her the same way. So I don't know why she's not like that with her sister. Um, Fred from chapter 1? Who's Fred from chapter 1? He's in his late 30s. So Fred tended to be relaxed while everybody else remained tense. He often broke up emotionally charged faculty room situations and staff meetings with an appropriate quip or humorous question. So relating that to, I think that Tiara just thinks that everybody around her is so tense and like she's trying not to be, and like I think that she likes the cheerleading coach because she can be honest with her, I guess. I don't know why she would like her, but that's my connection. It's like everybody around her is tense just like everybody around Fred was tense. Charles views himself as very athletic. So he's been told that he has the athletic abilities, the potential to be able to be an All-American wide receiver. I think that he should. If what I say to him about his thoughts, I would say be realistic here and don't be too confident because that's going to be your downfall. If you want to be an All-American wide receiver, you go be that, but you don't go boasting about it, or you don't sit here and talk the talk without being able to walk. And he keeps like saying stuff about how he's like got the capability, like, or the potential or whatever. But it's like until you get to that point, don't be boasting about it because that's not very humble, and because you're gonna the whole self-fulfilling prophecy thing. If you're gonna do that, like if you're gonna boast about it, I feel like it's just gonna be your downfall. Which I guess kind of opposite of that, but yeah.
Like she taught me how to move, how to joke around about it. So at around 9 years old, I became fast with her. It was such a big deal. Her out. One, three, two. I was gathering my core before I threw the ball. I want to teach myself how to work out. Some girl told me she was working out.
Taking a video of myself watching a video. Okay, Miss Stovall is I think that if anybody's going to be successful with teaching him and reaching him, then I think it will be her. From what I've seen so far, she obviously isn't successful right now, but I think that she could be in the future, a lot more likely than anybody else, because she's willing to look at the human, not just the student. She wants to look at the human and know the human, not just know the student. And I think Keyshawn is just being looked at as like a African American male student, not a human being, and that's a big problem that he's had, and he doesn't want to be like looked at like that. And so he puts up this wall like she was talking about. And I think that she, if anybody was to be able to break down that wall, I think it would be her from what I've seen so far. For him, success would look like, I feel like, I feel like I can't answer this because he doesn't really talk about this kind of thing, but I guess like if I was him, I feel like success would look like not just doing well in school or anything, but just more like being happy as a person, being comfortable in his own skin. And I don't think that he would really admit that necessarily because he seems like to be like very like trying to outwardly show he's comfortable, but really like he doesn't seem like he is because he would be more open then. From a student like him, if he were in my class, I would want to see him coming in after school or before school to talk. That's not even necessarily about homework, but just about life if he needed it. Because I think that would show progress as him in him. I would just like to see progress in him as a person. And on it, at the end of the day, if he gets held back, he gets held back, or if he barely passes, he barely passes. But I wouldn't want him to just be barely scraping by because he seems like so strong-willed and so strong, and like he could be doing so well, but he needs to be like comfortable in his own skin and grow as a person first before he can grow as a student because he couldn't even grow as a student without growing as a person. In what ways am I like him? I'm like him because this is kind of a deep question. I think I am like him in that I don't like ever getting help. I don't like people knowing that I'm struggling. I don't like asking for advice, stuff like that. I think I've always been really stubborn like that, like prideful. But and it's also kind of like out of a place of like rejection. Like my mom has always had super high standards for my siblings, and like I've always been an A B student, mostly A's, but then like throughout high school I got a couple B's. Now I have a couple B's, whatever. But I've always been like a good student, but my siblings were always like A plus students. And I just have never been able to sit down and focus like they can, and I've never been able to like pay attention as closely as they can and like sit for as long as they can. And like my mom never seemed to like understand that. And my dad's the exact same way, and I think he doesn't want me to end up like, not like he ended up bad, he just is very blue collar and like didn't go to college or anything, and he doesn't want me to end up like that, but he sees that I'm just like him, so he's the same way as my mom, and they've always pushed me to like past, not even just past my comfort zone, because I think it's important to like seek discomfort and to like live in discomfort sometimes, to grow, but they just seem to push me to like unreasonable extents that made me very unhappy like as a person. And yeah, so I feel like I'm like him in that aspect. Like when people push me like past a reasonable extent, it's like I either want to like push back or like just give up. And what was it, you know, like him? I'm not like him in that I don't. He seems to be like so like overcompensating for being not confident in his own skin, whereas like I'm very confident in my own skin. I didn't used to be, but all throughout high school I can confidently say that like I was very comfortable in my own skin, and I was very confident in the fact that I'm not a school person, and like obviously I'm going to be working in a school the rest of my life, but I'm not a school person. I'm more of like a hard worker, or like I don't like necessarily using this term, but like I'm more like blue collar about things than like sit down and study and read. Like I'd rather go like do stuff hands on and learn. But like in schools it's not like that very much anymore. It's just like be talked at all the time. So I've never been a school person, but that's also exactly why I am a school person, why I want to be in a school for the rest of my life, is to be able to help students. Not just the ones that are like me, the ones that are also not like me, that do follow like the societal standards and expectations for a student. But I have always wanted to like be able to like teach students that like that's okay. Like however you are made, like that is okay. And like this is like faith related, but like God made you perfect. He didn't mess up. And like I think that it's so important for students to accept how they are and to not try to change for the system, for the standards of society, because if you do, like if people try to push that upon you and you let them, then like you're gonna end up miserable. And I was miserable for a long time because of stuff like that. But I do think that I think that I want to teach students to like push back when necessary, but like in a respectful and like a respectful and professional way. Because I think there is a way to do that, and I think that I learned how to do that, and like because of that, I was able to like get through to like my parents that like I'm not gonna always have A's. I'm not always gonna get like be the best student in my class, like, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But they didn't seem to understand that until I was willing to like push back a little bit, when I was being pushed in like an inappropriate way, like or like a not like a way that wasn't like okay or right. Yeah, but yeah, he seems to like either push back or to like not push at all, and like in the video, and yeah, that's how I was like him, I guess. Um, I hate when people tell you awesome job when you didn't do an awesome job. Okay, shopping mall, chapter 1. That's chapter 6. Okay, how is this group an example of a part of a shopping mall high school? We discussed in chapter 1. I have to find the shopping mall high school thing. Okay, so I think the group shopping mall high school. So I think that I don't know if this is like what the question's asking, but I think it was interesting that the 3 students that were like doing the auditions for the acapella group were white and she was black. And I think like relating that, if that's what the question's asking, I guess like relating that to the shopping mall high school thing, it's like that they're still providing an opportunity for everyone, and they're providing like different opportunities for things like for like different types of people, and like they're trying to appeal to the consumers or whatever, and like that's what they were trying to do in the group that for the acapella audition. Her reaction to the boys, that was like her 7th grade crush, the love of her life or whatever, and she was like like so like happy that like he said she was good. How's her reaction to the boy related to the social emotional aspect of school mentioned by Miss Stovall? So I think that like the social emotional part, like obviously like that's was like a social thing because she had a crush on him and she was very emotional about it, as stupid as the answer sounds, and like that made her really happy, which probably boosted her confidence and made her sing better. So like when students are socially and emotionally okay and they're fulfilled in a good way in that aspect of school, then they're going to perform better like on their homework, or like in this case like an acapella group, like an audition or whatever. So um actually, wait. He seems to be teaching reading by like having them read at home and then talk about it in class. So I think that he could have taught this book instead of just having them read it on their own and then just take quizzes and talk about the answers and stuff. Like they could read it in class, or they could do activities like write an alternative ending, or like stuff like that to like really like engage with the material and interact with what they're reading instead of just taking quizzes about it and like regurgitating what happened. Okay, so to make sure that they were reading, so he started having them doing class or whatever, like it says in the question, because like he didn't think that they were actually doing it at home. But instead, like it gives a hint about like the student-centered approach activities for EDU 101. Like he could have them like take a note on each page, or he could have them like kind of what I said already is like do an assignment that requires some sort of creativity or like work of their own. That's not just like reading it, but like using that material and working with that material. Like not just reading it and seeing it, but thinking about it, engaging with it, working with it. It's like a note on each page, or like filling out a worksheet with like questions as they read the thing, like filling out the answers. So like they'd have to read it in order to be able to fill those out, or just like stuff like that. But like an activity to go along with the actual reading. That's not just reading it and then regurgitating the information on a test. His questions are like very specific. I would tell him instead of like having use the hamburger. Okay, so I would say like I like that you're asking questions. The hamburger method. I'm guessing that's like the good, bad, good, or whatever. I think that you could ask questions that are more using the material instead of just answering specific details about like what color was this or like something like that, because like even if you read the material you might not remember stuff like little details like that. So like using like ideas, like answering questions about ideas and plot lines rather than specific details. And then the next thing I would follow up with is I liked how you are asking for advice. I don't know. Okay. Terrence's mom believes that race has been a factor in his academics. So, what does contention mean? Heated disagreement. Getting heated. Okay. So I would say that for her case, that there are statistics for the school that show that like the African American students haven't really improved much over the last 10 or 20 years or whatever they said in this statistic, whereas the white students have went up whatever percent it was and were like constantly climbing and climbing. So I think that could be a case, a point to support her what she's saying, and a case countering her contention would be that so that was the example from the thing. And then going against it, I would say that maybe it has nothing to do with his race. Maybe it has to do with his learning disability, which is okay, because if he has a learning disability, obviously he's not going to learn like everybody else, which is okay. But maybe that's why, maybe that's been the real factor with his academic issues at school, not race. And so I don't really know if there's much of a way of proving that without like running some experiments and stuff.
It's just very irritating to me to see teacher son well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure 100% about that.
What from chapter 6 does that little connection thing remind me of? I would say, I mean, chapter 6 is all about teachers being effective, and I think that teachers, like, relating with the students as human beings, not just as students, and like really caring about them and their happiness, and like that's why he like hit his heart or whatever. I think that makes them a good teacher. They might not be able to express the material well or whatever, but like I think that students aren't going to do well with them, and they're not going to be effective as a teacher if they're not caring about them as a person too. And I think that based on those connections, like he could really try to work with Terrence like more one on one instead of just like in class. That would make him more effective. Doing related to the what could he already be doing? He could be already like making not like a friend with Terrence, but he could be like somebody that's like a role model to him and inspiration to him, somebody who like he knows he can come to, and he's like he could be like a safe place for him, kind of to talk or whatever it may be, which would make him more effective because if the student feels safe like in the learning environment because the teacher is making the learning environment a healthy one, then yeah, that's something that he could already be doing. And
Race isn't the only area that needs to be addressed, but it's oftentimes the biggest factor inhibiting success for some of our students, and also the biggest predictor of success.
so she says something about how race isn't the biggest predictor or isn't the biggest factor, but it's a big predictor or whatever for success in students. I think that, and she says that it's not the only thing that needs to be focused on, and I think that she by that she just means that there's so many other issues besides just race. There's learning disabilities. There is like socioeconomic status that hasn't that may not have nothing to do with race. Like there's other things that are predicting student success and failure, but that race is the biggest one, and in the school, and that it needs to be addressed because of that. Like it's a big one that needs to be addressed, and something needs to be ASAP because it's the biggest one that's affecting us.
But instead of taking the racist change is not something
She thinks that they need to work for change, even though it's something that they're not used to. He says something about going and hanging with the white kids. Like he says it in like a tone that's like kind of like jokingly. Like, and I think that he like just like said it's like for the attention or whatever to be like associated with like oh I hang out with the white kids. I guess is maybe like a good thing, but it was more of like a joke. I couldn't tell if it was like mocking or if he was like doing it to like be cool. Like I couldn't tell, but maybe more like mocking. But What would I say to him? I would say that like it doesn't matter what color they are, like you can hang out with whoever. That's like, just kind of like a weird question. Like hang out with whoever, like do your thing. Um, and don't like sit there and boast about it. I guess. Concept of multiculturalism. I would just say like by hanging out with the white kids, like you can be introduced to their culture, they can be introduced to yours, and it would have some. It would make a more like understanding and empathetic. It would like create for an environment of more like understanding and empathy for like each other as people, because you could understand each other's cultures and values and stuff better because you're understanding each other's cultures. um why do I think the concept of race was created? I don't know who. I feel like it was created by Americans, if I had to say who, because everybody in their own countries like is their own color or whatever. But then you get to America and it's the melting pot where everybody has different skin colors because it's the people are from all over the world coming to live in America, and you have like again the melting pot. There's just people from every race. So I feel like it was definitely created by Americans, like 'cause it's not like you're just gonna like in other countries, like especially like well like in other parts of the world, more first world areas, I feel like you see immigration from all areas as well, but America's definitely the biggest one. They're known to be the melting pot. They're known to have the most immigration and everything. Um, so I would just say like I feel like the concept of race was created like to be able to like decipher people from other people, like because they were different colors and they look different. And if like kids were asking questions, you could say like, oh, they're black, they're white, they're whatever it may be. And I feel like that's probably why it was created. Um, Cheerleaders are not by student section, while the drill team is by the student section. The drill team coach says she never realized that many other students and that the cheerleaders have asked in the past to rotate sections of the drill team. She also ends by saying that the cheerleaders are comfortable. Her statement is contradictory because she said that she like never realized that it was even like anything about race, but then she also says like, oh, that the cheerleaders are fine there. So it's like that contradicts because like they're obviously like asking to be rotated and stuff, but then she's also saying like, oh well, they're fine. So she like acknowledges that like acknowledges their feelings, but then disregards them by saying like, oh, they're fine where they've always been. Am I struck by the fact that most of the drill members are white? And um, uh, I think I'm like, I don't know if I'm like struck. I mean, I don't think, I think that like it's interesting because like they're all, a lot of the black, a lot of the cheerleaders are black and a lot of the drill team members are white. And of course, like the white people are sitting like where the student section is and like everything's going on. It's like, of course, they get the better spot. But it doesn't really strike me because I feel like how else would it, not like how else would it be like, but like I feel like they just, it's, the world is so messed up like that that like it doesn't like surprise me because like messed up stuff like that happens all the time. Um, so it doesn't like surprise me or like strike me, but I think it's just horrible that like they're being separated by any means and like that she's not willing to rotate them. Something like that. I feel like it does but doesn't matter, and I feel like it should matter only because I feel like it okay, I feel like it does matter, but it doesn't matter because I feel like it does matter because like obviously the races are being kind of like segregated a little bit. But I also feel like like I feel like people are people, so like it should matter. I think it should matter because the cheerleaders are not sitting there, not because the black cheerleaders aren't sitting there. And I think that everybody should just be on an equal level, and that the issue shouldn't be, oh, they're black and that's why the cheerleaders are sitting over there. I think it should just be like the cheerleaders aren't getting their chance to sit over there. Um, as relate to the I'm glad I'm girl book. I think that like they are black and they are female, the cheerleaders obviously, so they don't really get the rights that like they aren't really like treated the same as like men, and they're not really given the same opportunities like sitting where everything's going on at, and like they don't get the chance to rotate like not like that they're all men, but like the drill section or whatever. I don't know. Um, so I think it has that to do with like the female aspect of being cheerleaders, but then also just the same thing is kind of racial. Like it's kind of like I think women are like a minority kind of, and then races are like certain races are a minority, and then I think that both of those are in play here, and that in both those minority groups, um, like they're not like really given the same opportunities or like expected to perform the same way that the majority group is. Especially who's going into what space, that's a racial predictability. What does that mean? I think that just means that like it's if somebody had to guess, they would guess that the black people aren't going to get the same opportunity this or to be in the space where everything's going on where you want to be. What is the role of the school in terms of addressing that issue? The role of the school is just like making like a rule, like the principal can go out there, like the athletic director, whoever would be in charge of that, technically, then just to have them rotate, like switch off every week, or make a new space where they both are that's like equal, to like the student section and stuff. The role of the students is to like, I think the role of the students is to like stick up and say something or like talk to the like school administrators, and same thing with the parents is to like do it respectfully, but like talk to the school, like say something, don't just sit there and let it happen and complain about it, you know. Like role of the community is to maybe like sign a petition or like raise awareness, start a movement, but like again in a peaceful way. Role of the teachers is I think to I think being a teacher is hard because it's like they're representing the school, but they also want to represent the students. They're like the middle ground. So I feel like the teachers need to like be respectful of the school's policies, but they need to like stand up for the students as well. In terms of race, what stood out about the football game, I think to me it stood out is the other team was like completely white, and the school's team that we're watching, Oak Forest or whatever, or Oak River, whatever the school is called, is like mostly black. I think that stood out to me. And then same thing with like the stands, the sections and the stands, or like the cheerleaders, like whatever groups of people there were, they were with the same color of other people usually. Okay. That coach is awesome. Oak Park, that's what it was. Okay, so the quote is, "Oh yes, I say it plain. America was never America, and yet I swear this oath, America will be." What do you think he was saying in that quote? I think that he was saying America was never American me. So he said that like he was never treated like America was all about freedom. That's obviously what America's all about. So America was never America. So he never felt like he had freedom in America. Yet he swears on this oath. So he swears that it will change in the future, and that like everything he did in the to be an activist for civil rights and rights for minority groups, that won't go unnoticed, and that will become a movement, that will become powerful and that will change America to how it should be. So America wasn't America for him, but it will be America in the future. Okay, so I think in my chart I only had a couple instances because I was kind of focusing on the questions, but a big instance where I didn't like how the students were behaving was when that one kid at lunch was getting bullied, or like made fun of and teased and stuff, and then like what was it? It wasn't Terrence. It was Grant. No, whatever the kid's name that like didn't have the dad or whatever, and he would like get picked. Like he was like picking on another kid, but then the kid was like saying stuff about him not having a dad. Like I didn't like how either of them were acting to each other, but just because the kid that was like being bullied wasn't showing, or he was like showing it more, doesn't mean that the kid who was more confident and like lively and like laughing about it wasn't being bothered as well. I think that they were both being bullied, and I think it was interesting to see that it was happening in the same racial group, which I think kind of goes to say that like it's not always just one race to another. Like it happens between humans, not between races all the time. And yeah, they're both of the same race. No, I didn't like the students were behaving. This is like I don't know. This wasn't in school, but I didn't like how Tiara was being with her sister and like not really obeying, and like her sister obviously cares about her and is like trying her best to be a good role model and stuff. And like maybe she could try to get to her differently, but I don't like how Tiara like didn't really have any motivation at home, and then that kind of did carry over into school about how she just didn't really put any effort in or like have any sort of goals or hopes or dreams, and like that kind of bothered me because it was like you're complaining about like your like there's this huge issue about her race and like her being mistreated because of her race, but it's like if she's not holding herself to higher standards, then it's like no one else is going to either. Like I don't like, so I think this is kind of a common thing in the whole video. Like the students, like there's this issue and like the parents were complaining and they were complaining about not being like held to the same standards, but it's like they're not demanding those standards. And I think that obviously you have to demand a lot more. Yeah. Obviously you have to demand a lot more as a minority person, but if you're not going to demand that for yourself, then like I've always been told, like demand the respect that you deserve. So like demand the rights that you deserve if you're not getting them. And like I think that, like yeah, you should be getting them in the first place, but if you're not, like do something about it. Don't just sit here and complain and sit there and do nothing about it. Like do something. But yeah, I think there's a lot of instances where the students I didn't like how they were behaving, and it had to do with I didn't like how they were. I didn't like how they were complaining a lot. White or black students. There were multiple instances, and like I don't like how they were like complaining, but they weren't doing anything about it. Or like even the white kid in the beginning of the video was complaining about not being able to go to the African American or Black Lives Matter assembly. It's like then say something about it. Like and maybe he did, but in the video it didn't show it. But yeah, I think that a lot of the instances was people. There was a lot of instances where people were complaining or like being negative about something, but they weren't willing to do anything about it, and they weren't demanding the respect that they were complaining they weren't getting, and they weren't demanding the rights that they were complaining they weren't getting. That is the end of video 1, episode 1.